The earliest influence I can think of on me as a storyteller, as a writer, because I began to write stories and poems when I was pretty young. But the one book that I really credit with a lot of my creative and otherwise thematic and philosophical influences is the Indian epic, the Mahabharata. I still vividly remember how I came upon the book. It was in my grandfather's library, and he on a summer holiday. I must have been about 9 or 10 years old, and I was looking for something to read. Summer holidays was always for books, and he allowed me to take the book home. I was completely captivated by the book from the first page. It was there have been many versions of the book written, but this one was written in English by one of our freedom fighters, Indian freedom fighters. And from the get-go, I was hooked. It's a story of, two families ultimately going to war with each other. But the seeds for this war are sown hundreds of years before, and the characters, the philosophy, the action, and the plotting, so intricate, how something done hundreds of years ago by one person could have seismic effects that affected an entire country, a culture, whole generations of people. The link between small, intimate, private acts and huge seismic political, societal, cultural consequences was just something that was completely captivating. I see it in retrospect now. With the fullness of time, I can look back and say, this was what drew you to that book. But the the pull that I had for that book was instinctive, and I was immediately sucked into it. And it still remains to me, probably the greatest book ever written, and very important, pivotal turning point in my life, certainly a big influence in my life. Filmmakers always Hitchcock. Um, Everything I learned from film, I think I learned from him, how to use the medium to shape narrative. Everything that I do badly is 100% on me. I can't lay that at his feet. The Hitchcock dialogues with Francois Truffaut still remains for me, a go-to manual. Like, how would Hitchcock have solved this problem? And his films, I mean, the very placement of a camera, why do you put a camera here as opposed to there? And you can often find the answers in what is the emotion you're trying to evoke in a viewer. That kind of precision of thinking came from him, and he's my huge, big cinematic influence. As far as writers, yeah, I learned plotting from Agatha Christie. I mean, I began to read Christie books when I was very young, and watertight plots and creating motives. Don't pull rabbits out of hats. Things have to be sort of inherent in the plot when you finally reveal the mystery. The precision of her plotting, and as far as creating atmosphere, which is another big thing for me. Atmosphere is the sort of unspoken subtext of a scene. Two people could be having a conversation, but this conversation would be really bad if, for instance, we sensed a big storm coming and shortly we're going to have to board up our windows and stuff. So something as simple as that, but the ability to create psychological atmosphere. I learned that, I got a lot of that from reading Daphne du Maurier when I was a kid. So they still remain as influences for me. Yes, the pivotal moment was I'd landed in Los Angeles straight out of film school. My husband was straight out of law school. And I was looking, how do I break into this big, beast, Hollywood? How do I get into the film business, right? And at that point, I mean, the film was already a few years old at that point, but we saw Hollywood Shuffle made by Robert Townsend, a wonderful writer, director, and actor. And it was, he funded the film on his own. And so David, my husband, had the idea, okay, since I'm a new lawyer now and everybody's sending me credit cards, I don't have money, but I have a lot of credit cards. I can run up a huge debt. Why don't you think of something that can take place in one room with just two people? And I will finance that film for you. You don't have to go run around sending your script and getting rejected by everyone as brother. So the minute he said one room, two people, I immediately sparked to the idea because it was such a creative challenge. And really, that was the genesis of Closet Land. Necessity became the mother of invention. But the mother of invention went to deep places in me, meaning I got into themes that I actually had been mulling about, it turns out, for quite a bit of my life at that point. So that really is the prosaic beginning of Closet Land. Necessity, the idea to put it, to center the whole piece, to situate the whole piece in one room and feature just two characters, that was part and parcel of what, my husband originally said. He said, come up with something, two people in one room. My dinner with Andre was an example. It was just two guys conversing at a dinner table, and the entire movie was that, right? But in my case, I wanted it to be a whole room, and I wanted the premise not to just be a conversation of culture or art, although that's quite fine. I wanted to use the limitations of the room to test, how far I can get away with, how far I can go with regards to theme. And so immediately the idea of an interrogation situation came to mind because it's replete with conflict. It's replete with drama. It's replete. The situation itself is full of high emotion. It's a very fertile situation. So that's why I decided to set the whole piece in one room. That was always the intention. That was how it was written. One room and two characters. Minimalism is a choice that, a filmmaker can make. In fact, any artist can make. A painter can decide, I'm going to use only one color to paint, you know, paint this on this canvas. Minimalism was my choice in making Closet Land because we were a young couple with not much money. So I didn't want to conceive of something that would require multiple sets and multiple actors. And there was concentrated, focused power in just sticking to one room and just sticking to the two characters. The power comes not from the context, not from the physical context of one room, and not from the presence of just two actors. The power comes from the theme and the narrative, because the situation is an interrogation situation. A man is questioning a woman on grounds that her children's stories are politically subversive. So that is the dynamite. That is where the drama comes from. That is where the emotional sweep comes from. You transcend limitations of set and just the presence of two actors with the boldness and the scope of the themes of the film. And that's what I wanted to explore. And I actually liked the idea when I was writing it that the everything that was used was so simple. The interrogator, is just a table and a chair. His tools were simple. It was a pair of pliers. It's a worn out, rusty barbecue grill. It's a battered down recording device on which he plays screams of other tortured persons to spook her and to intimidate her. These are simple, simple, simple things. But when you use them in the context of the narrative, they start to assume monstrous proportions. And that daring of it was what, was truly exciting and exhilarating for me. The duality of inhibiting the film occupying a very specific place and at the same time also seeming to be a broad sweep allegory, I think that comes from the potency of the narrative. The fact that these people are not named, I don't name what country this is taking place in. One small anecdote, which might be interesting to people who like the movie, is when I was shopping the script around, trying to get money, raise money for it, one constant thing I was told was you should situate this film in a specific country. In other words, you're from India, you're from the third world, so stick it there, stick the film there, right? And let's get a couple of brown actors to do this. And I bucked it because the film was an allegory, was a metaphor. And the allegorical and the metaphorical aspects of the film would be lost because people would immediately say, oh, she's just talking about what she knows, the third world ghetto she was born in. So that is why, this is just a side anecdote. I was very stubborn on keeping it in no place that anyone knows, not in a time frame or a historical context that anyone can identify with, because it could be happening anywhere to anyone, and not just politically, because the film is not just about political abuse, it's about private, intimate, the deepest and the most profound of violations, the violation of a child, the violation of innocence. And that theme, I think, is without context, without specificity, and it should be so. Because the film does deal with childhood abuse, sexual abuse of a child, many trauma victims and psychologists and scholars who look at repressed memory and the whole world of trauma, what it does to the victim, so on and so forth, they have indeed written extensively about closet land and what it does. In fact, there's a great book, The Motion Picture Prescription, written by a psychiatrist, Gary Solomon, who actually does study closet land from that, particular angle. My thing about what I think about this is, if you're writing something that's allegorical and metaphorical, let it have wings and spread everywhere. This could indeed be about childhood abuse, but it could also be about political abuse. I've had people who have had abusive bosses or abusive co-workers who found points of connection with the film. That's what happens when something is psychologically true. A bunch of people can see their own experiences reflected in it. And no, when I was writing, no, all I was conscious of was the sweep of the words and the arc of the plot, because I knew where I started, I knew where I was going to go, and I knew where I was going to end with the project. So what carried me was really that, the sweep of the narrative, the sweep of the words, the world that I was creating. I wasn't consciously tapping into, or even unconsciously tapping into trauma literature or repressed memory studies and so on and so forth. This was just my imagination being given full play. Some people have asked me actually to explain whether the interrogator is her shadow self, the woman writer's shadow self, taking form and coming to torment her. No, I always saw it as two binary forces pitted against each other. The interrogator, who's also the perpetrator of childhood abuse, pitting the best of his skills to finally break down the spirit of his victim when she was a child. And now she's also a state's victim, the state's victim, because she is accused of writing politically subversive stories. So for me, they were always two distinct characters, one versus the other. It was always a binary opposition and a conflict that, both of them needed to ram heads once and for all and settle this. I have been contacted and continue to be contacted by people who are either survivors of political tyranny, many men who have been abused by clergy write to me. I get notes from them on social media, how much the work means to them, how it actually captures their experience and their pain, how they felt heard, and women too. Uh, what it means to me, I feel humbled. I mean, I just wrote something, with my imagination, and if it speaks to people's lived experiences and it offers them some measure of healing, it dignifies their experience, then the only response is, I'm humbled. Thank you. The critical response to Closet Land and the response of people, average people, ordinary people who saw it and connected to it, be the people victims of any kind of abuse or not, because some people were just youngsters, high school students, college students, seeing this and being deeply moved and affected by it, and to my knowledge, these people, these admirers of the film, were not abuse survivors. But the response between some of the critics, I won't say all, but certainly some of the powerful critics and average people, your average viewers, as well as people who had been through trauma and stuff, it was like two different planets. It's almost like these people had seen two different movies and, emerged, with two different reactions to it. I wasn't aware I was putting anything particularly bold out. I come from a culture where one of the sayings, which I really love in ancient Indian ethos, is, so what if you say the word fire? Is it going to burn your tongue? Meaning the human mind should be free to entertain any subject matter, under the sun. Nothing should be taboo. Everything can be entertained intellectually, right? In the realm of art and thinking and books and philosophy is the safest, because we can talk about any damn thing, right? And we don't have to go out there and execute it. That is the point of it. The talking, the discussion serves as a safety valve where people exercise their worst demons, and then you go out and you can lead your nice little life and come back again and delve into some philosophy to let loose some steam. So the idea of being scandalized or having a sensitivity zone and, oh no, this is triggering to me. Oh no, you can't do that. That is alien to my thinking. And I think for the arts to survive, more people should actually think like that. We can't be so easily, so easily pushed into sort of a fetal position by thoughts. It's just words. Those are just images on a screen. It's not reality. It can't hurt you. So that is my answer. I'm asked, like, did you anticipate that it's going to create such negative, response from some of the critics? And no, obviously not. And even if I had, I would still make the same film. People who watch the film now, who have discovered the film now, and then go back and look at what some of the leading critics said then, are horrified and all of that. But it's a mistake to think that the negative criticism came just from men, because some women were equally, pretty vitriolic in trashing the film. Uh, and likewise, there have been male admirers of the film. Bill Cosford, who wrote for the Miami Herald, several male professors who have taught the film, truly moved by it, wrote about it. So it's been sort of an equal opportunity thing. It's not gender specific, people who like Closetland or not. I think really what it is, and this is speculative. None of us knows what was in the heads of those critics back then. But my feeling is it has to do with stereotypical expectations of what a female filmmaker from the third world, or if take even the word female out, what a filmmaker from the third world is supposed to do. There's definite expectations, and I don't know as far as Indians are concerned in the arts, whether that has been fully removed, but there is an expectation that if you're a filmmaker from the third world, your stuff should be about portraying that third world for your Western audiences. Like you have to mirror your country in a way that your Western audiences will understand. Anything beyond that is like, you're not supposed to go there. You go right back and sit in that ghetto we've planned for you. I think it was coming from that more than anything else. Frankly, even my gender. That is my view. It's been both an honor and a tremendously humbling experience to have my film be written about extensively and studied by people like the legendary Kate Millett in The Politics of Cruelty and film scholar Kathleen Murphy in Film Comment, um, and also several, far too many to count, theater journals and university publications, students writing theses on my movie and sending it to me. Uh, all of that has been deeply meaningful. And yes, I think they approached the film with a measure of seriousness and didn't flippantly dismiss this film as, oh, it's nothing, it's just drivel, which unfortunately was the response, from some of the critics at least, stateside in the US. So yes, there has been again two different worlds. It's like two different planets. The people like Kate Millett and Murphy seem to have seen an entirely different film from the critics who dismissed it. I think any content creator, any story writer, any storyteller, if you create something that has a deep emotional resonance, and if you're dealing with loaded topics, like, for instance, in my case, state tyranny and child abuse, and making a link between the two, of any content creator who's playing with fire, so to speak, is going to find that people bring meanings and people see things in it that maybe you did not put there, but they do see it. I mean, a great example would be Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. What the man intended when he wrote the book is very different from what some people took away from the book. Again, he's dealing with child abuse. He's dealing with a pedophile and the pedophile's fascination for a 12-year-old girl. And it's also a criticism of America. It's a satire, actually, more than that. It satirizes life in America. And I think that, I mean, the things that people bring to his work are sometimes not even there. Projection is, I suppose, what it's called, and that is part and parcel of any viewing experience. There have been a few writers, writer directors, or just directors who have reached out to me, to compliment Closet Land. And there have been reports I've heard from friends and professionals that, oh, so and so, such and such an actor mentioned to me that he really loved Closet Land. But I will only tell you instances where people directly told me. Uh, Quentin Tarantino, the great, he and I had our first films together at the Yubari Film Festival in Japan, and he had gone to see the film because he liked Madeline Stowe. I think he had seen her in something before, and he wanted to see, okay, what is this about? He knew nothing about the movie. He just went and saw it, and he praised it. And he told me also that this is how people should see a movie. They should be just exposed to your film without any preamble or without, anything at the end. Just experience the film and dive into it, see what this world is all about. So that was one. And Richard Shepard, again, writer director, talented writer director. He wrote and directed The Matador, starring Pierce Brosnan. He told me that this was Closet Land is one of the best examples of claustrophobia. He said, it explores claustrophobia better than any film, and he was praising that. And another one is Keith Gordon, who a wonderful actor, wonderful director. He acted in Christine, the Stephen King adaptation about a car that goes nuts, and subsequently directed wonderful films like Mother Night and others. And he is again somebody who admires the movie. Josefina Lopez, a wonderful writer, screenwriter and playwright who wrote the iconic movie Real Women Have Curves, is another person who has, admired the movie. Um, and when I got the deal with Imagine Entertainment, Ron Howard's company, I met with a bunch of actors and actresses who wanted to be in the movie because they liked the script. I had the good fortune of meeting Isabella Rossellini, Isabelle Huppert, who really loved the project, Robin Wright, who liked the script a lot. So, there have been people who connected to the material deeply. Yeah, I get asked by film students oftentimes about blocking, when you only have a room to deal with. Uh, the piece has one room and two characters, but it is not theater, obviously, for the obvious reason that in theater, the audience can choose what they want to look at, right? If I'm sitting in this seat and I'm watching a play unfold and there are two characters and he's doing this, she's doing that in that corner, and in the middle there's a chair, I can choose to look at anything there. So theater, therefore, it clips the wings of the creator in a way, whereas in film, people have no choice but to look at exactly what you tell them to look, because that's all you're going to frame and that's all you're going to show. So when you are designing shots for a film, you plan what exactly do I want the audience to be looking at and what emotion do I want to get out of the audience at that particular point. That dictates the blocking. A theater director, unfortunately, would not have those freedoms to do that. And therefore, I think in many ways, theater remains limited by physical reality, by what an audience can see. Whereas in film, it truly becomes the landscape of nightmares, of dreams. You can actually penetrate that world pretty deeply in film because of cinema's ability to take you. Like, look at that great shower scene in Psycho. At the end, you end on Janet Leigh's dead eye. You can't do that on stage, just absolutely can't. And there you go. That's the difference between reality and the nightmare landscape, the deeply psychological landscape, that you're allowed to penetrate. You're able to penetrate in film. In drafting, in crafting the screenplay, set in just one room with just two actors, I think that I didn't want to compromise on suspense, on drama, on making things gripping and making the action move quickly, all of those things that are essential for film. But also, there's another interesting thing that happens when you're stuck in one room and there's no way out. There is a way out, and that way out is within yourself. And so the journey for the female character is one that begins completely external. She's focused on him. What is he going to do next? Where is he going to hurt me next? What question is he going to ask next? What lie is he going to tell me next? Two, slowly taking those tentative steps that then become more firm and more assured as she goes within. When there's no way out, you do have a way out, and the way out is within. And in her case, it ends up being her imagination that ends up being her way out. She's able to summon all those creatures that she created in her trauma, in the trauma of abuse. She created those characters, the rooster, the cow, the cat with green wings. These characters that she created come and bail her out. Essentially, her imagination bails her out. And I think that was, for me, something, as an individualist, that was profoundly very satisfying to write, to direct, and to see portrayed on screen.